Thanks for coming today, everyone. Huge turnout. Great to see such a crowd. Obviously, interesting topics today. So before I introduce our speakers, I just wanted to mention that Stephen Ruxell has put together a paper on the tax policy proposals, which is out on our chamber website with an accompanying survey. We would encourage all our members to read it, share your views and complete the survey. That would be super, so we can gather as much data as possible on what everyone thinks. I know there's lots of amendments coming out at the moment, haven't had a chance to read them all. Certainly some of the headlines look to cover some of the issues that we're raising in our paper. And I'm not sure if Steve's here today, but he's certainly happy to talk to people involved in it and all the members. So our speakers today are Jim Roberts from the Guernsey Community Foundation in the charity SOC, and then Steve Lansdown presenting his vision for Guernsey's future from a tourism and La Grande Mare perspective. And huge thanks to PwC, our new sponsors for these OGH lunch series.
Thank you. And thanks for having us. Thanks for having the foundation here, the coveted charity support slot, backup slot, hot ticket. I've been told to stick to time. I've got 10 minutes to sort of win you over. I think there's 10 slides. They may not be visible to everyone in the room. So to assure you, there's nothing behind me that I'm not going to say verbally. So you'll get the full story. I'm not going to take any questions so we can keep things tight, but I will be hanging around afterwards and obviously happy to talk about anything to do with the foundation. And we can also meet outside as well. So the Guernsey Community Foundation has been around a while now, over 10 years. We celebrated our 10th anniversary a couple of years ago. I was watching people come in. I know a lot of people in the room. There's a lot of people I don't know as well. Some of you would have heard of the foundation before, but I bet some of you haven't. And in a way, I hope you haven't, so that this talk is useful. The foundation was founded in 2010 to, and I quote, promote effective philanthropy, believing that the well-directed donations and the giving of time and ideas can bring about real improvements to the community and the lives of people most in need. In the early days, we kind of fixated on the promoting effective philanthropy element of what we do as a kind of strap line. But in recent years, we've tried to pivot towards the latter of the quote that I just gave you, really, which is to remind people of our sort of fundamental purpose, which is to make things better for people on the island, with a particular focus, as I've said, on those that have least. Now, there's a clicker. There we go. Okay. Oh, here we go. The main things about us, the main takeaways, we're a charity, obviously. We have an independent board. Sir Richard Collis is our chair. Prior to Sir Richard, it was Wayne Bulpett for many years. We are funded entirely by a combination of private donations from local philanthropists, including Steve and Maggie Lansdown, who have been supporting the foundation for many years, in fact, and admin fees, which is what we charge other private charitable trusts for work that we do for them. So a combination of donations and those fees is what enables us to keep going. Most of you, I think, can see the slide behind me. You'll see that I've put apolitical there. We are apolitical insofar as it is possible to be apolitical. If you are doing something, if you're making arguments to prospective donors or to the public, then inevitably it becomes political, but we are not a political body. Similarly, we are not a membership organization, although we do, we have a very good grasp, I think, on the needs and the challenges, the needs of and the challenges facing the third sector. We don't ever presume to speak on the sector's behalf because we don't have charities as members. The Association of Guernsey Charities is a membership organization. They'll come back, I'll mention them in a minute, and they do have authority to speak on behalf of their members. We are emphatically not a lobby group, we're not a campaigning group. So what are we? Having said everything, we're not. We don't really have a neat definition, and you'll hear me speak and you'll say he's right. Yeah, he certainly hasn't given us a neat definition. We're a bit of a blend of a grant giver, a think tank, And this last bit, we really nailed upon an elegant way of describing ourselves, a bit of a consultancy service for charities and at times for government. In larger jurisdictions, you would see, I'm sure you will know of, sort of dedicated think tanks and consultancy services and grant givers. But given the size of the island and the sort of spread of expertise we have on the board and on staff, we do a blend of those three things. Just quickly to talk about our core functions. Since day one, there's been three arms or three pillars to what we do. Most simply, perhaps, is giving grants. Our grants program is worth, if you like, if you can call it that, about £450,000 a year. That's how much we distribute to local charities, community projects occasionally. The money doesn't go overseas. We have relationships with a range of private charitable trusts, some of whom prefer to be anonymous, some are happy to be cited in publicity. But thanks to the influence we have over how that money is spent, it increases our reach, if you like, as a grant giver to over £600,000 a year, which by Guernsey standards is quite impressive. Beyond that, we also enter into co-funding agreements with a range of other grant givers, such as the Social Investment Fund, Lloyds Bank Foundation, the John Rampton Trust, and others. So a combination of the money in the grants fund that's donated to us by our supporters, and the influence, as I say, that we have over charitable private trusts and our opportunity to co-fund means that altogether we can make quite a difference in terms of grant giving. Those grants are available all year round. In addition, a couple of years ago, we set up an endowment fund into which supporters of the foundation can give money, and the admittedly long-term aim there is that in time we'll have enough money to generate enough interest to pay into the grants program. And underneath, if you can see there, it says wraparound support. That's to say that in addition to simply writing a check for applicants for charities, we also work with charities to help them strategize, to help them grow, to perhaps help them do things more efficiently. And often those areas where help is needed come to our attention through the grant application process. The second of our three pillars, supporting the third sector, that's obviously a very broad description there. What does that mean in practice? It can mean volunteer matching. So we know of charities' needs, we know of volunteers that are available, particularly skilled volunteers, i.e. people with a particular qualification or area of expertise that they can lend to charities. So we match those two together, we link them up. We organise training programs for charities. 9 times out of 10, they're free. We've got quite a burgeoning resource library on our website, which contains everything from policy templates to sort of best practice guides on how to operate as a charity. More generally, we promote best practice within the third sector, and that can encompass things like safeguarding, data protection, how best to articulate the impact that you're having so as to attract more support from funders. Again, some of you can see behind me, it says deep dives. That's where we, from time to time, work very closely with a particular charity and look at all aspects of their operation from, as I said earlier, from their kind of longer term strategic thinking through to aspects of safeguarding, data protection, volunteer recruitment and retention, and so on. So that's how we support the third sector. How we celebrate the third sector is in the form of an annual community awards. We were, like many people, affected by the COVID situation, so we had to postpone our last awards a couple of times. We finally had an outdoor COVID-friendly, or unfriendly that should be, award ceremony at the Coat Hills in May. We're pausing the awards for 2023 so we can take stock and review what we do and how we do it, but I'm sure we'll be back in full force next year. Finally, in terms of our three pillars, we attempt to influence change in keeping with our memoirs, with our mandate. To that end, we conduct research, some usually sort of self-initiated, but sometimes we're commissioned to carry out research. I say policy development on the screen behind me, but I mean, we can't create government policy. Of course, we can talk to government, and we do. Sometimes we initiate that. Sometimes we're invited to talk at ways in which certain aspects of policy, particularly social policy, might change for the betterment of the island. Awareness raising, that's again flagging up issues and challenges which charities come to us and ask us to help with, and sometimes those concerns, those anxieties deserve a wider airing. So we do that either publicly, or we do that through events that we occasionally organise. I've already alluded to the work that we do with government. That's on an ad hoc basis. We've been invited to participate on various working parties over the years. In-work poverty was a recent one. We launched an anti-poverty research project a couple of years ago, which again was interrupted by COVID. So from time to time, we are, as I say, invited to talk to government, or we suggest we have a chat. Most recently, that's been in connection with our homelessness report, which I'll talk about in a minute. And finally, we can assist and advise on charity startups and pilots. And as you'll see in a minute, we have created charities ourselves where there is a gap in the market, so to speak. Generally, our philosophy is that Guernsey's blessed with many, many charities. And actually, there are some areas where two charities are doing similar work. And sometimes, for the purposes of efficiency and economies of scale, there's an argument to merge. Okay, I'm going to rattle through some of the things that we're proud of achieving over the last few years. I think these are roughly in chronological order. Again, I'm happy to expand on them afterwards if anybody's particularly interested in what you're about to hear. But milestones, well, we launched the volunteer matching program that I described earlier, where we put like a dating app for charities and volunteers. We led on the creation of the Guernsey Employment Trust. That was many years ago now, but GET is in a very strong position. It's doing really good work. It works with employers. I'm sure most of you all know this already. It works with employers and with people with a disability. It puts them in touch with each other. It supports the employee and the employer in the early days of those placements. We created, I think in 2017, it was the Arts Strategy Working Group, quite a cumbersome title, but it was an attempt to bring together around the table some of the experts, and there are many, so we couldn't bring everybody to that table, but some of the experts in the creative arts, creative industries in Guernsey, and we published a review of the creative sector, and in that review we made a range of recommendations, many of which have now been carried out, and one of which was to do with the reconstitution and I guess the reinvigoration of the Arts Commission. We created Aging Well in the Bailiwick, having identified that there was a gap, again in the market, for want of a better term, when it comes to support for older people. That ran for a few years, and that's recently been subsumed with our support, with our blessing, into age consent. More recently, we funded a multi-year bailiwick social prescribing pilot, and I think bailiwick social prescribing is becoming more to the fore in terms of the public consciousness. It's been piloted in multiple jurisdictions overseas, but this was Guernsey's first attempt to do it. So we were there. It began when we were approached by somebody that wanted to set up bailiwick social prescribing, and again, in keeping with our design not to create unnecessary extra charities, we ran it as a pilot within Health Connections first of all, and then when the Health Improvement Commission set up, that seemed a better fit for what bailiwick social prescribing is about, so we helped it move across to them. It's since gone on to secure other funding from Social Investment Fund, which will mean it'll be 5 years up and running. It'll run at least until the end of next year in its pilot form. We opened the Charity Support Centre, which is hopefully quite self-explanatory. And again, recently we created the Guernsey Nature Commission, and that will do. We'll have more to say on that in the next few weeks. It's been a long time in gestation. We're about to go properly public with it before the end of the month and launch a recruitment drive for a board. Not for the first time. The plan there is to fund it, to help it get off the ground, and then incrementally to step away from it and let it do its own thing, stand on its own 2 feet. Last year in July, we published a substantial report on local homelessness, and I will talk about that in a minute. And then a matter of weeks ago, we transferred resources to the Association of Guernsey Charities. I mentioned the AGC already, and this represents the latest and perhaps the most substantial effort that we have made to support the sector. The AGC is going through its own sort of transformation at the moment. It's in a good place, and Jenny Nettleship, one of our staff, who's really built up a great rapport with many, many charities. It made sense that Jenny worked for AGC, and so she'll move at the beginning of February. A couple of minutes on homelessness. We're not a big organisation. There's 4 of us, and so when it comes to our quote unquote social policy work, we kind of pick an area and focus on that and do what we can and then move on to something else. So for the next year, approximately, this is our area of policy focus. It began really with a report that was commissioned by Maison St Pierre, although we'd already, as a foundation, had concerns about what we perceived to be a spike in local homelessness or reports of actual rough sleeping. And you'll hear there's a slight difference between homelessness doesn't necessarily mean rough sleeping, but in the space of a few weeks at the end of the year before last, we heard 3 separate incidents of people literally without a roof over their head. So it coincided with our concerns. And the report was a kind of a state of the nation, an attempt to get a grip on the problem, to try and count or enumerate the problem, which was challenging, and to look at what provision already exists. So what help is out there to assist people who are either homeless or at risk of homelessness. The challenges were, there's very little data out there. There's very little data collected or stored. And there isn't a definition, certainly not a sort of a state's endorsed definition, which makes things really slippery. And the challenge there is the lack of a definition and the lack of data might be an argument to not do something. But we needed to get beyond that and look at what did exist in an effort to bring to people's attention the scale of the problem or the approximate scale of the problem in the hope that it would trigger further work. So we came up with our own definition of homelessness, and it relates to a combination of an inability to afford somewhere to live, or you are living somewhere but it is inadequate to meet your needs, perhaps because of the condition of the property, perhaps because it's too small, perhaps because you have physical disabilities which limit access. So affordability, accessibility, and security of tenure. I'm afraid it's not alliterative, we had to go for an S there, but that's really about how can you be secure and comfortable in that property? Are you relatively assured that you will be there for the foreseeable future if you want to be? So if you answer no to 2, or at least 2, those 3 criteria, then in the context of this report, you are classified as homelessness or homeless or at risk of homelessness. So with that sort of nailed down, we then, myself, but principally Alex Lemon, the author of the report, spoke to all of the charities over here that deal with homelessness, usually tangentially. There's only Action for Children is the only kind of dedicated homeless or homeless type charity on the island. There's no one else. But there's lots of charities whose work is impacted by the risk of homelessness. So we spoke to them, spoke to the state, spoke to civil servants. We looked at things like occupancy rates at St Julian's. We looked at the social housing waiting lists. We looked at the care leavers, number of care leavers and where they were moving on to. We looked at the number of prisoners being released and where they had somewhere to go or didn't. So we gathered that together. We published the report in July, and not time to go into too much now, but I will mention some of the recommendations that report made. There was 12. These are the kind of the main ones in one sense. Not for the first time, the foundation did identify a gap in the third sector. In this context, it relates to a lack of provision or homelessness support provision for the over 25s. Action for Children will look after you until you're 25. Beyond that, it gets a bit tricky. We believe there is a need for a dedicated local housing charity for over 25s. Guernsey is very unusual in not having one. If you look to Jersey, if you look to the UK and beyond, it's extremely commonplace, but we don't have one. Additional training flats, those are, it's a stepping stone really between living non-independently and having your own place. A training flat is where you've got support which helps you become an independent tenant. Action for Children run 7, I think. We've identified the need for the same again, so at least another 7. For reasons already alluded to, it's really important that Guernsey can agree on a definition of homelessness. in our research, we found that the indicators of poverty report, which the state's has published for many years, I think 5 of those reports consecutively flagged up the lack of a definition and the intention to come up with one. But at the time we were producing this report, there was still no definition. I think the next one's a given. There needs to be improved data capture around homelessness, so we can measure, not just measure the size of the problem, but track the success of efforts to tackle it as well. So improved data capture, improved data sharing within service providers, again within the parameters of the data protection law, and increased coordination of services. The report was quite frank in saying, look, we the foundation and very few other people can suddenly create extra units of accommodation to house people. And until the affordable housing programme in particular finds its feet or accelerates, and I understand there's many, the Guernsey Housing Association have got many properties about to be built. But until such time, one of the things that can be done is a better coordination of existing services and a better sharing of information so that multiple services know who they're dealing with and how best to help them. Tenant-friendly social housing policies, I won't dwell on that too long, conscious of the time. Housing support forums that the foundation has created from the ashes of the report, but in the aftermath of publishing the report, we want to retain the good connections that we've made. So Alex Lemon, my colleague, hosts a regular housing forum. It's a mixture of third sector and statutory services getting together to share best practice, flag up concerns or evolving concerns, and generally work together to try and plug gaps in the system as best we can. And then interim housing is a proposed new form of housing. You can think of it perhaps as as B&Bs or lodging houses, but operated by a social housing provider. So you've got a guarantee of quality. It would be affordable. It would be a stepping stone. It wouldn't be a permanent solution. But if there was some sort of interim housing provision to take the pressure to a degree off social housing waiting lists, and also to reduce the number of predominantly single adults kind of shuttling around often unsuitable short-term accommodation. Okay, we're nearly there. So what else is there to say? Okay, so in the aftermath of the homelessness report, and in alongside Joni moving to AGC, we've had a little we've restructured. We're placing a renewed emphasis on the development of social policy, and so we've recruited Alex Lemon, the author of that report, to assist with that. We've kept Maison St Pierre as the reports commissioners close, and we're in talks with them and with Action for Children to look at the increased provision of training flats. We think we have an agreed definition of homelessness. We have been talking to civil servants recently. There is certainly a proposed definition within the next indicators of poverty report, so that's looking positive. We're in talks about I mentioned the new housing forum that we're coordinating, and the ongoing support from Maison St Pierre. And in fact, I've mentioned the ongoing conversations with government as well. We have felt supported by the states, by ESS and E&I in particular. They're arguably the principal stakeholders when it comes to certainly the affordable housing side of things. So ongoing dialogue with them. This is the penultimate slide. I've mentioned the dedicated housing charity, so we're in the middle of researching that now. We don't want to jump to any conclusions. We need to decide what it can do that will have the best impact. That sounds obvious, but there's so many things it could do. What can it usefully do to reduce harms caused by homelessness? I've mentioned the additional training flats. Those talks are ongoing, and I've mentioned the definition, which hopefully will carry through and be adopted. Last slide. This is just to say that we think we're doing a lot. We can do a lot more. I've mentioned there's 4 members of staff. There is scope to expand any element of what I've described. So we could have a larger grant giving program. We could do more to support the sector, and we could do more in terms of social policy research. It is dependent on funding. So if you've liked what you've heard and you want to find out more about what we do, and perhaps discuss ways in which you can support the foundation's work, then you can either grab me after this, or you can email me and we'll have a chat about it. But we're always seeking supporters. We have a grants program that you can pay into if you want to support the island by having your money go to charities, then the grants program is the best vehicle for that. If you want to contribute to our operational expenses, great. As I said, there's scope to expand. And finally, special projects. If there is either you or someone you know has a particular interest in an area of social welfare, for want of a better term, then yes, we have and we can do research, and we can help you progress or meet those interests through the work that we do. So that's a kind of crowbarred little. I think you're obliged to say how you can help the charity that has this slot. Right, I've rattled through that. I've probably gone over 10 minutes, so thanks very much for your patience. Those of you that couldn't see the screens behind me, I think everything on there I have said to you. Thanks for listening. I have my instructions. I am now to take this mic away from me, so it can be away with me, so it can be used as a roaming mic. And I'm going to hand over to Steve, who will talk about his views on the future of tourism in Guernsey. Thank you.
I've been asked to talk about my vision for tourism in Guernsey. My vision for tourism is evolving as the Grande Mare develops. So apart from seeing people in rain jackets and backpacks walking around the island looking for bus stops, I don't know too much about how tourism actually works at the moment. But I do have a view as to how it will work for the Grande Mare and what the benefit of the Grande Mare will be. Basically, I've never invested into tourism. As an investment, I've done things which have developed into tourism. And I'd like to just explain, I'm sorry, I've got to put my first slide up. There you go. The Grande Mare, and by default, Guernsey tourism. Don't worry at the back. This is for my use, just to remind me what I've got to say. Basically, in 2007, I answered an advertisement in the Financial Times for a share in a safari lodge in Botswana. And we went to see it, and we fell in love with the place. And if you can see the picture, you can see why. Absolutely wilderness, wild animals. It's a fantastic place to be, great for photography, just a place to get away from it all. And that's what we bought it for. That's what we bought into it. However, once you get there, you realise that you're paying to keep this. And you look at the opportunity, you get to know the people, the local communities, and you want to do more. So from a 22-bed lodge with 2,500 or so hectares, we now have 45,000 hectares, 4 lodges, with 2 lodges to open. It's developed into a tourism business. And why have we done that? We want to pay to conserve this. We want to pay to protect the wildlife. We want to protect the habitat. We want to help the communities in this area. So it's become a tourism business. So I have a lot of experience of a tourism destination. Tourism is the second highest, Botswana's main product is diamonds, as you probably know. Secondly, it's tourism. So it's a big plus to the GDP of Botswana. But that's not what I've got invested in. It's a tourism destination. On a different note, you probably know that I'm involved in sometimes a well-performing football team and rugby team, and sometimes not. We won on Saturday, so I'm in a pretty good mood, so it's okay. But in 2016, we redeveloped Ashton Gate Stadium in South Bristol. Again, we didn't do it because we thought this would be a great events destination and so on. We did it because we wanted a better football stadium for our clubs and our supporters. But when you're developing these things, you work out, you've got to be able to pay for them. They've got to be able to pay for themselves. A stadium has to, it's a major capital asset. This was a 50 million development, £50 million development. We have to sweat that asset. So not only is it there for football, or not only is it there for rugby, we have concerts in the summer. We have exhibitions, we have business events, we have banquets, etc. All the time, it's generating funds. So it's a commercial operation, but it attracts events. And the reason I'm putting this up here is because I think from a Guernsey perspective, we need to attract events. We have the Renoir exhibition coming soon in this year. Fantastic event to get people to come to the island. The people already live on the island, but get people to come to the island and to enjoy it, to come and visit here, to be our visitors, to come and spend money on this island. to help our GDP. We've got the Island Games coming up. But what upsets me about the Island Games, in a sense, although I'm very much looking forward to the event, is that all we're concerned about is housing competitors. When we can't accommodate people who might want to come along, the families of the competitors, people who might want to come just to be part of the occasion, like going to the Commonwealth Games or the Olympic Games. We need to be able to do that. So our tourism industry needs more accommodation, better services. Ashton Gate, to me, was an eye-opener in the sense that we make it work 7 days a week. It's nice to say that. I can stand and say it's profitable, and it serves as a hub to the community as well. I'm going to see if I can skip over this, but this is a quick sort of video of where we are with the Grande Mare at the moment. I'll talk over it while it's happening. Basically, I thought you'd be bored by me by now, so just to show you where we are. So effectively, the Grande Mare, we've got our planning permission eventually. We've gone through the demolition phase, which is this is showing you, and we're now ready to start. And we've been doing some dredging in the Dwits, and we've been digging out the lakes. I think we dug out about 100,000 golf balls from those lakes. But you can see here what's happening. Everything's being recycled on the property, so all the stone and everything else is going to be reused in the development. But we're at the stage now where in April the work on the course will get underway in earnest, and following on from that, the work on the clubhouse and the accommodation and so on will follow on. And we're looking to open in the summer toward the autumn of 2025. That's our timetable. It was going to be 2024, but for other reasons it's not now. So basically, the Grande Mare, I didn't buy this to go into tourism. If I look at Guernsey tourism, what is it, 2% at most? I think that's the best figures we had in 2019 of the GDP of the island. So it's not a mainstay economic benefit to the island as such. So you would say, well, what is the vision for tourism? It's to get people here, it's to get them to spend money, it's going to give them a reason to come. So when I go back to Ashton Gate, talk about Ashton Gate, or go and talk about Tully Safari Lodge, it's giving people a reason to come. And Tully Safari Lodge is easy, wildlife, you know, that experience is second to none. It's on most people's bucket lists. Ashton Gate is to go there for whatever reason. I talked about the community. That was the vaccination hub for the southwest in the COVID. That was a warehouse for food and distribution to the poor households in the Bristol area during COVID. So you can see how it is part of that community. As far as the Grande Mare is concerned, we want it to be the same. By looking around on this thing, you'll see that again, with very simply, it's location, location, location. Fantastic countryside, fantastic coastline. It's a great place to have an operation. But as I said, I didn't buy this for tourism. I bought it because I like golf. And I wanted to develop a golf course. And I'm going to talk you through where I think this will now benefit the island and will benefit tourism. And hopefully we'll touch on a few points along the way as we go. Through everything that we do at Pula, which is our family office, we have 3 core values. And contrary to what some people may think, our development of the Grande Mare is based on conservation. We have 100 acres of beautiful countryside, good wildlife, active wildlife, and we intend to protect that and conserve it for our generations, future generations, and generations before them. So a lot of work goes into that. We want it to be a centre for the community. We want people to want to be going there. We want the local people to enjoy the facility, but it's got to be commercial. This is an extract from the environmental management plan that we've developed for the Grande Mare. I'm not going to read it out to you because but I'm going to pick on 2 things. I'm just quite chuffed on the last thing. I'll read it out. 88 invertebrates identified between April and September 2022, including 17 out of 19 butterfly species. Doesn't say, you might not be interested in butterflies, but the fact is for us to be able to identify 17 of the 19 species on the island, to me, is something to be proud of, something to be encouraged, something to, we want to get talked about, we want to get the whole 19. But the idea is we know what we've got base data, and that base data will allow us to conserve and develop that area in the future. We're going to be replanting 10,000 trees as part of the golf course development and the estate development. That's an enormous amount of investment in the habitat, and in doing so, we're gaining 9.3 acres of net gain of let's call it biodiverse land, including 5 acres of wetlands. So everything we're doing is, yes, we're building a golf course. It's going to be a top class golf course, but we're making sure we look after the estate. We're making sure we look after the environmental side of what we're doing. So conservation is the heart of what we're doing. For community, it's fairly straightforward, really. It's going to be a top class golf course. The members are going to thoroughly enjoy playing it. They're going to be very proud of it. It's going to attract attention. We've developed a PGA Academy. That's again will help us older members, but will also encourage junior golf. Did it help develop? Perhaps we'll get the next Masters champion or the British Open champion coming from Guernsey with the help of the PGA Academy. But it's development of sport. Again, one of my interests, sport, and I want it to be at the top of what we do. We have the health and wellbeing suite. Got a 25 metre, 6-lane pool going in there, fully equipped gym, treatment rooms, etc., which will help the wellness of the island. And last but not least, going back to the conservation side, education is key to our youngsters to learn about the environment, to know more about it. In many ways, they're teaching us about the environment at the moment, us, the older ones. But in reality, if we can get the schools coming along with classes, being run in that area, learning more about the wildlife and everything else in that area, it's going to be beneficial to the community. But it's got to be commercial. So going back to what I was saying, as a top class golf course, we're going to work extremely hard through our marketing, which will be global, through all the golfing magazines, through all the golfing outlets and other areas, to attract people to come to the Grande Mare. One, to play golf. Come on holiday, play golf at the Grande Mare. It's the top course in the world. It's featured in the XYZ magazine. Come and play. Get people to come in. We hopefully might be able to get some tour events. There's an event called the Legends Tour, which took place in Jersey last year for the first time, taking place again this year, where professionals come and play in the tournament alongside amateurs. I played in it. I made a complete arse of myself. And corporate events. We talk about companies here having events in the island. I'm thinking of companies from the UK or companies from Europe bringing their staff across, incentivizing their staff to come here to spend time at the Grande Mare, to enjoy the golf, to enjoy the facilities we've got there. We're going to have a range of restaurants there to meet everybody's tastes, and it's going to be an events destination. You know, weddings. I mean, in its previous status, it attracted weddings. It will attract even more, better weddings in the future. That's the way to describe it. Again, with that location, the sea views, the countryside, etc., to the photographs and just the facilities that are going to be available. Business meetings, just one-on-ones or group meetings. Again, we'll be looking to accommodate out there, and conferences and exhibitions, perhaps launches of new products. Again, everything we're thinking of doing is to get people coming, i.e., visitors to the island, visitors to the Grande Mare, and to provide that benefit. And I think that's what tourism is all about. I look at the numbers for tourism, and I'm not quite sure what I'm reading. I'm just concerned about getting people coming here, being able to get them to the island, get them to my location, and then look after them well when they're here. That is the focus of it. And that's what we should all be looking to do. I've said some of these things already, so I don't really need to go through them. But the golf will attract visitors, business and events will attract visitors. We all want people to spend more when they're here. People, I understand, I don't know the numbers, so you can correct me if I'm wrong, but people come off the cruise ships. We get lots of people come off cruise ships and they do a little tour of the island, or they go around, they may spend a few bob here and there, but they don't spend enough. So let's get them off. Let's make sure that we market to those people on the cruise ships before they get off the boat. So they go somewhere, in my case, the Grande Mare, play a game of golf, have a meal, go on a nature walk, do whatever they want to, spend the time on the beach, or continue on their tour around the island. But let's get them here. Let's focus on getting them off that ship and spending money. Don't say it's nice to come and just say, "Oh, look at these numbers. Okay, fantastic." Get them spending. You know, their profits are in their pocket. Your profits are in their pockets. That's the way to look at it. Obviously, we're boosting the economy with the construction and everything else that's going on in the developing the site. Of course, we'd be adding, we'd be employing people, and that's the key factor to make sure that and their people are paying taxes, but their support services. And what I mean there is that if we get it right, we're not going to have all the accommodation that we're going to be able to want to provide. So the other hotels, particularly on the West Coast, we're going to be working with them. We're going to be looking for partners to work with us to look after our guests when they're here. They may stay in somebody else's hotel and somebody else's accommodation. They may eat in somebody else's restaurant. They may play at somebody else's golf course. But all in all, they come in, they're spending money with us, they're spending money with the rest of the island. So my vision for tourism is that we all start working together. Don't try and look at it as though all this competition, because we've only got a small island. It's only, we've only got so much to do with it. Our GDP for tourism is not that great. So let's build it. Let's make it a major contribution to the economy. Let's make it go from, let's target 2% at the moment. Oh, it's less than 2% after COVID. Let's say we get back to 2% quickly, 4%, 6%, 8%. We start to be significant. We start to make the politicians stand up and take notice. We start to tell them, wait, sorry, go on with my band here. So I'm going to go on to my final thoughts, so I can open up for questions. Visit Guernsey. I've been, because I knew I was coming here, I've been reading the website a little bit and the social media they've been putting out. And I would describe what Visit Guernsey do as nice. It's nice. It's not good. It's nice. It's not bad. It's nice. Visit Guernsey should be run by the industry. No question. Government should get their hands off it. They're useless. Absolutely useless. Don't know what they're doing because they're not incentivized. We in the tourism industry are incentivized to get as many people here and look after them the best we possibly can. The state's paying lip service to it. I know there's members of states in the audience, but they know that's the truth as well. Visit Guernsey should be run by the industry. I understand there's something called the Tourism Management Committee or something being set up. I'm presuming that's independent. If it is, it's going to come from the industry. That's great, fantastic. But Visit Guernsey should be part of that. It shouldn't be part of government. So let us drive the business. I understand that the funding for Visit Guernsey is being cut from 3.1 to 1.8 million. That doesn't inspire me to think that the states of Guernsey are very keen on encouraging tourism. But Visit Guernsey, it's nice. Let's make it good. Let's make it exceptional. The Eastern Seaboard Development, that's what you call it, development of the harbour out here. It's a no-brainer. We're an island. People come to us on boats. Let's accommodate as many people on boats as we can. Let's get them off. Let's charge them for coming. Let's get them off the boats. Let's get them into the restaurants. Let's get them onto the golf courses. Let's get them into the facilities, into the activities on the island. Let's get them spending money. It's a no-brainer. It's a gateway to the island. It should be developed. Runway extension has been debated. I've been on the island 12 years now. I think it's been running all the time I've been here. And we have debates in our own office where we disagree. I think we should just stop talking about it. It's a waste of time and effort, and it'd be a waste of money. As long as we can run the airport efficiently, as long as we can get aircraft to carry people comfortably onto the island on a regular basis, in and out, that's what we want from a tourism perspective. All I want from a tourism perspective. I want to know that my guests, when they come, have a good plane to get on, efficient service to get us here. When they come off, they're welcomed, they're not pushed through a thing. And then they're brought to my location, and then they're looked after properly. I'm not worried what plane they come on, as long as it's comfortable and it's clean and it's well serviced. You know, we don't need big jets. We're not an easy jet destination, in my opinion. So let's just stick with what we've got and make the most of it. Sometimes they say, you know, less is more. And I think in this case, it's the case. I think the harbour's a no-brainer because I think you can see that the numbers increasing. I think at the airport, we can increase the numbers without extending the runway. And my last throwaway line, which is topical, is beware your GST. I can give you a case for bringing in GST. I don't want to get into this big tax debate, but my worries are this. Guernsey is looked upon when people get off the boat and they think they're buying in duty free and not paying VAT or GST. It's attractive for people to come to the island. As soon as we start putting GST, we lose an advantage. I think from tourism, we lose that advantage. It's going to cost more for us to run our businesses with GST involved, shadow a doubt. It's going to increase the burden on our administration. I was around when VAT was introduced in the UK, and the burden that it put on people to do all their returns and everything else. In other words, doing the work on behalf of the government was enormous. I'm not sure that the industry would see the benefit from it. And I'm sure there's other ways of raising the money, but that's a different debate. So, ladies and gentlemen, I've rattled through this a little bit. I've ranted a bit, and I've hopefully given you some thoughts as I see the future of tourism. But in very simple terms, as a tourist, I'm a tourist in different countries. I want to be able to get there easily. I want to be able to arrive there and feel welcome. And when I get there, I want to know how to do things and get things done. I want somebody to look after me. I want to enjoy myself when I'm there. There's a problem, I want somebody to solve it. And I want to go home and tell everybody else about it. That's got to be our vision of tourism. We've got to make that happen. Not think too hard about it. It's a simple process, really. It's just making sure it happens. Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate many people here aren't a fan of politicians getting too involved in tourism. But one of the success stories in the last few years has been things like the Guernsey Literary Festival, Guernsey Sports Events, the Guernsey Photography Festival, etc., etc. How can we build on the success of those festivals so they really start attracting thousands rather than hundreds of tourists that will regularly stay and spend money here and contribute to the economy and may even move here? Because I think in the past, Visit Guernsey was more focused on just brand awareness and that kind of mass advertising. And so I'm saying, how can we really build on the events that have already been quite successful?
I think you've highlighted it in marketing. And that's why I go back to my comment out Visit Guernsey, not trying to be critical of them, but just saying it's nice. It's not, doesn't get to the heart of things. The literary festival is great, but what do we do to attract people to come in? And I don't have the answers to this. It's just, I think what we should be doing is people in Hay-on, why when they have a book festival every year, should know that there's a festival here. I don't know they do. I mean, it's sort of making, it's getting, it's awareness of it, and it's then making it easy for them to do it. So if it's, if I think of it, and I can only think of it in financial services terms, unfortunately. I'm going to answer that way if I may. But if you give somebody an opportunity, if you talk to somebody about an investment, that's great. You give them the information, but then you've got to make that. You've got to provide the ability for them to actually do that, make that investment, make it simple, quick, and efficient. I think it's the same with any industry, really, but tourism. So make them aware of it, and then make it easy for them just to pick up the phone or tap in an application, so they've got the tickets and they're coming. But I think that's a great example, because I didn't even think of the literary festival when I was talking, but it is. We do have these events. We just need to make them bigger and wider ranging. the football is another example. I mean, again, you know, GFC of football. But the only thing I would say, John, is I don't know the numbers that says how many people come and that. So I think we did that base data as well. So then we can build on it. People would correct me if the data's there somewhere and I don't know about it. So I really admit that.
Stephen, thanks for moving to Guernsey, falling in love with it, and getting your investment checkbook out. Sorry, I'm this on. Two points. One, the new tourism management board is meant to be independent, but it isn't, because anything it does goes back to the Committee for Economic Development, so not quite. But my question was, the 100,000 golf balls you found, did you cost those into your investment case when you were doing the numbers?
Which I have. No, it's like bonus balls, but yeah, no. What we've done with those as much as we can is to package them up and give them or sell them for charity. That's all we're doing with those. But I was just amazed at the number. It's just ball after ball after bag after bag. It's unbelievable.
But yeah, so what are your thoughts specifically for the project, but also more broadly on what we can do?
Well, what I'd love to do is be able to employ more local people, but not having. When I look at these statistics, apart from education, which I find very strange, we're the lowest paying industry on the island, so that doesn't stand us in good stead. So I think there's the cases we always have to import some staff. We do have staff accommodation in the project, and we probably need to have more accommodation than we're building. But again, it's as I said, it's evolving. But we do need to be able to bring staff across and to be able to keep them here for with this moving people backwards and forwards all the time is I don't think it's conducive to good practice really.
The historic government neglect with respect to the industry, I've been told, relates to the fact that when tourists come here, there's no GST, so there's nothing going into government coffers. And as you mentioned, salaries are relatively low, it's finance, so there's a perception that there's less money the bigger the tourism industry. How would you better align the incentives of government around the success of the industry?
Companies pay tax, people pay tax, employees pay tax, social security, etc. So to say there's no benefit is, in my view, wrong. However, I don't know, again, because I have to be honest, we're building this, we haven't started trading yet, so a lot of things to be learned, but whether there's a bed levy, as they have in other countries, whether there's a conservation levy, ways and means of generating revenue. So no, we all know that taxes are there forever. They weren't intended to be when they first started, by the way, but that was a long time ago. Yeah, so I think from that perspective, that and as for wages, well, I think, to be honest, we have to galvanise our industry to pay more. We are underpaying people by the sounds of it. We need a minimum wage, if you like, within our industry, which is probably what not people want to hear who are involved in the industry here, because the margins are low at the moment. But that we have to give them better working conditions. We have to give them better wages, and then obviously the tax that they take be higher. Any more?
As a previously not very good golfer, I'm intrigued in the economics, or at least the sort of, I guess, the options for new members. So I'm not sure if you've got around to pricing it. Is it likely to be a Wisley type situation where you have to buy a share and then there's a fairly punchy annual, or will there just be an annual fee and presumably there's a pay as you play type of option?
We've tried to give assistant members an idea of what sort of area we'll be looking at. But in general terms, for members, there'd be sign-on fee, joining fee, and an annual fee. We haven't worked out the exact numbers. Although I was playing with the tune, if I could find 500 people to pay £100,000 for a membership, which is what happens at Loch Lomond, for instance, in Scotland, then that pays for the building. So
no, absolutely. I had friends of mine who bought those before, and unfortunately they defaulted, and their membership wasn't on it.
Took 2 attempts, but they got there in the end.
Thank you, Steve.
Okay, well,
I'm
thank you.
gonna give a quick round of applause to Steve, please. To say a very quick thank you on behalf of the Chamber to Steve and Jim Roberts from Guernsey Community Foundation for taking the time out to talk to us today. I think this event was a little while in the planning, so I'm sure you'll agree it was worth the wait, and it's just wonderful to see conservation at the heart of these large projects and spades in the ground. So that's fantastic to see the progress. We do have a really good lineup of speakers for the Chamber OGH lunches coming up over the next few months. So I do encourage everyone to keep an eye out for what's coming up. We've got Lieutenant Governor coming to speak with us next month, and pertinent to what we've heard today, we've also got Art House Jersey and a collaborative event with Art for Guernsey in March, looking at really how we're promoting Guernsey further afield and some wonderful things happening on island. So do look out for those. This is actually my final OGH official lunch as the Executive Director, and I'm really pleased to be able to welcome into the room Alice Gill, who's going to be ably taking over the helm in the next couple of weeks. So please do come and say hello to her as well. It's been a real pleasure to get to know a lot of business community over the last year, and get to know lots of you in the room very, very well, and a real pleasure to work with the incredibly talented board of directors and industry heads who give their time voluntarily to the Chamber of Commerce. If you aren't formally engaged with the Chamber as a member in the room today, I would really encourage you to come and find out a little bit more about what else we do and how you could get involved. It's a wonderful community and the biggest business community on the island to be a part of. And as we always hear at these lunches, there is lots to get involved with. So thank you to everybody for coming. I won't hold on any longer and invite lunch in. Thank you, everyone.
Thanked her already, but a huge thank you to Laura. We hope to keep her involved as much as possible. We're very grateful for what she's brought to Chamber. She's helped with the recruitment of Alice. So we're going to have a nice smooth handover. So welcome to Alice, but thank you so much, Laura.